Duck breasts are for special occasions, so they need special treatment. The last thing any of us want to do is ruin a duck breast when we're trying to cook it. So today I'm going to share a foolproof technique with you to cook duck breast, and it gets it perfect every single time. By the end of this video, you'll know how to get this perfect pink blush from edge to edge, have crisp fat on top instead of chewy fat, and I'll show you a quick pan sauce recipe that you can get ready whilst the duck is cooking. So let's get started. Here I have a 300-gram duck breast. This is the average size they come. The smallest is around 220 grams, and there's some monsters that are closer to 400 grams. And it's good to know the weight for later in the recipe. This will help with the rule that I use for cooking duck breasts. So right now the duck is close to fridge cold, but the fat is a bit soft. To get a crisp layer of fat on this breast once cooked, I want to score it with my knife. This is going to help it render out. If I run my knife along it now, it does slice, but this could be easier. So I'm going to throw it in my freezer for 10 minutes to firm up that fat. I don't want to freeze the breast, just make the fat a little harder. Okay, so 10 minutes later and this fat feels firmer to the touch. So I'm going to start scoring. I like to cut in diagonal lines, running close together. At a guess, they're spaced around 5mm apart. It's important I don't cut into the meat. You can see here that I've cut all the way through the fat in places, but not into the meat. Now I'm turning it 90 degrees and making the same diagonal slices, so I end up with a small diamond-shaped scoring in my fat. You can see that the fat has already warmed up and become very soft again. In hindsight, I should have left it in the freezer for a little longer, but I'm going to be stubborn and work quick. If this happens to you and you're struggling to cut the fat because it's too soft, then just put it back in the freezer until it's hard again. Now I need to get rid of some of this excess fat around the edges. The easiest way to do it is just to pull the fat out a little like this and slice following the shape of the breast. This fat shrinks a lot when it's cooking, so leave more than you think attached to the breast. It's really easy to end up with a tiny square of crispy fat if you're not careful. So something like this. Then lastly, I just need to trim off some of this sinew. This white stuff here. It's really simple. I just pierce my knife in under, slice out in one direction to create a flap to hold onto, grab that flap and slice the other way to remove it. Don't worry about getting 100% of this sinew off. This section here runs into the duck breast. If you try to remove it all, you'll have minced meat. So you'll have to change recipes and go for a burger instead. That's all the knife work. Next up, the seasoning. I'm adding some salt to the fat side and some to the meat side as well. I had a comment on a video recently that made me laugh. It was something to do with how I didn't use enough black pepper. If I can find it, I'll put it on screen. It's true, I don't like putting black pepper on everything because it's quite strong. I think it makes everything have a similar flavour, especially when it's cooked into the food. So I prefer to be more selective with how I use it. And duck is somewhere I definitely use it. So I've added some, but importantly, just to the meat, not to the fat, for reasons I'll explain a little later. Now I'm leaving the breast to sit for 10 minutes to let the salt absorb and let the breast lose that fridge chill just a little more. Oh yeah, and the trimmed fat and the sinew I'm going to keep to one side as well. A big thank you to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video. So, I do 99% of the cooking at home, and I love it. But with a busy schedule, it's not always easy to be creative and prepared for 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. That's why organisation in couples is key to a smooth and productive week. We have a magic card up our sleeves, HelloFresh. It makes dinner time fun, choosing menus together in advance. There's healthy options, and it's practical. It also helps with creating a better routine by avoiding unhealthy takeouts just because there's nothing at home. Or maybe you don't feel like shopping in your time off. It's just relaxing to know that dinner time is under control. Get 50% off your first box, plus 20% off the next 2 months, plus free desserts for life. You can scan the QR code on screen or enter the code BENGO50 at the checkout to get this discount. And if life happens, HelloFresh understands. You can pause and restart your deliveries at your convenience. 10 minutes later and I'm ready for the next step. I'm putting the breast into a cold, dry frying pan. There's no oil or anything in this pan, but I will add the trimmed fat along with the breast fat side down. Then over to my stovetop, and I'm placing that onto a medium-high heat. For me, a 7 out of 9 on this induction stove. This is where I need to introduce the rule that I use for cooking duck breasts. It's known as the 6-6-6 rule. What it means is 6 minutes fat side down cooking in the pan, then 6 minutes in the oven, then 6 minutes resting. This is why it's good to know the weight of the breast. So for this average size breast at around 300 grams, it'll be 6-6-6. For a smaller breast, I would do 6-5-5, and for a larger breast, it would be 6-7-7. I can't take credit for this trick. I learnt it in my time working in the Ashburton Cookery School. If you don't know them and you're in the UK, then go check them out. They're amazing at what they do. I didn't put any pepper on the fat side for a few reasons. One is the pepper would burn being in contact with the pan for 6 minutes. And secondly, it stops the fat being in contact with the base of the pan wherever there's pepper on the fat. So it doesn't get crispy in areas. Also, this pan is brand new. I've just bought it for this video and started the seasoning process. It's a steel pan with no non-stick coating at all, so I'm going to document its journey of building up a natural non-stick coating over time. So stay tuned if that's something you want to see. So after 4 and a bit minutes of frying, I haven't even touched this duck breast. I just left it to do what it needs to do. I just stayed with it and made sure it didn't sound like it was frying too hard. For the last minute or so, I'm giving the meat side a baste. Then once the fat side has had its 6 minutes, flip the breast onto the meat side and give it a light browning on the base and edges. Not too much. Then out of the pan, onto the tray, importantly, fat side down, and into the preheated oven set at 180°C for, you guessed it, 6 minutes. So I'm going to fire through a simple, quick 2-ingredient pan sauce. I'm going to keep the pan on a medium-high heat. I'm going to keep the fat frying to render out a little more and add the bits of meat trim from earlier. Fry them for about a minute, occasionally stirring. Then drain the pan, just leaving a little fat behind and the fond stuck to the base. Back onto our high heat, add a 50ml shot of port, then I'm deglazing the pan using a wooden spoon. Once the port has reduced a little, around 30 seconds of cooking, add 250ml of a good stock. This could be a duck stock, but most people don't have that available, so a chicken stock is the next best thing. Then I continue to boil that for a minute or two until I have a light syrupy consistency. This will thicken more as it cools, so go looser than your instincts tell you. And that's a really quick pan sauce. There's a more detailed video on my channel that shows you 3 different types of pan sauce. I'll put a link to it at the end of this video. So after 6 minutes, I'm bringing it out onto my board and I'm going to let it rest covered for another 6 minutes. I haven't checked its temperature with a probe or anything. This is how much I believe in this method. Once it's had its rest, let's see what it looks like. I like to do what's known as a chef's slice with duck breast. So take a tiny amount off the sides, these are the chef's snacks, then slice it in half lengthways to show off that perfect cook to the fullest. I prefer this cut over lots of thinner slices because it holds the heat so much better. This duck breast has probably come up to somewhere between 50 and 55°C while resting, so it's not all that hot to begin with. If you slice it a lot and then put it onto a plate that's cooler again, it will be cold in no time. And lastly, if you want to learn more about how to make a quick tasty pan sauce like this, then check out this video next.